tung kuljetës. Shkarko aplikacionin e bankës ProCredit dhe paguaj profi nëpërmjet telefonit mobil Android. ProCredit Bank, shumë profi.
With learners and educators, what's really important as we move forward with education in the future is not just the memorization or the gaining of knowledge and understanding, but it's the process and the experience. And again, that brings us back to this concept of learning to learn. Ultimately, at the American School of Kosovo, we're laser focused on helping kids learn to learn so that they can self-direct and self-regulate their learning. Reading intelligence is a big part of that. Typically, schools teach reading up until 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. At the American School of Kosovo, we do it all the way through 12th grade. And we get kids to think deeply about the elements of a story, for example, in a piece of literature: character, setting, conflict resolution, and plot. But it's not enough just to know those elements. We want our kids to be able to expound upon them. And then whether they're reading a 3rd grade, 4th grade picture book, or they're reading a Hemingway's Old Man by the Sea, they can think deeply about the story. They can think about the main character. What are their desires and struggles? What can we tell about them based upon their actions, their choices, their relationships? What does it tell us when they're acting out of character? And what can we learn about that main character through secondary characters? So when we establish some of these fundamental elements of fiction, for example, then kids are learning to learn. And we don't want the teacher to generate the question. We don't want the book to generate the question. What we want is for the students to generate the questions. And so again, the more we can use, whether it's on-site learning or online learning, the more we can direct to the social experience, the constructivist experience. And let me just come back so we're all on the same page with that term, constructivism. You know, if I read a story and I just finished the novel, and I'm reading it with a partner, and she just finished the novel, and we look to one another and say, okay, bottom line, what's the gist? What's your bottom line interpretation and reflection upon this story? And I look at her and I say, you know what? Mine is chocolate. That's what I take away. This whole thing's about chocolate. And she looks at me and pauses for a moment and she says, that's interesting, Brian. I hadn't thought about that, but you know, when you say it, it's starting to click with me. And I said, and then she'll ask me a few more questions, and I'll help her go a little bit deeper about why I came to the gist of chocolate. And then I'll finally look at her and I'll say, you know, well, if you didn't get chocolate, what did you get? And she looks at me and she says, well, I got peanut butter. And I said, whoa, you know, that's interesting. I didn't see that at all, but when you say that, I kind of get that too. And I ask her a few more questions to get a deeper understanding. And then our eyes get real big, and we realize that what we've done is we've synthesized our knowledge and we've learned from one another, and we've got something totally new. We've got Reese's peanut butter cups, you know, chocolate and peanut butter, that branded candy that they sell in the States, and I don't know if they sell Reese's here in Kosovo, but it's a well-known candy. So you get my analogy. So again, as much as possible, whether it's on-site or whether it's online, we have to stay true to what research evidence best practice says works for kids, which is social, collaborative learning, problem solving, and so forth and so on. You know, and then how do we bring this all together? One thing we're envisioning and we're working on as well, and a lot of people are, is taking this concept of a digital-based portfolio to the next level. So, you know, we can get a degree or a diploma from a school or a university, and we can get grades and we can get high test scores, but does that really tell me that you're a dynamic learner? I might argue it does not. So what can tell me that you're a dynamic learner? Well, perhaps if I've got a digital-based portfolio that that lists across my last 10 years in school all the books I've read. And I've even categorized them in genres, from realistic fiction to historical fiction to science fiction. And for some of them, I've actually written some reflections and some quick interpretations of the gist of the story. I'm showing somebody who I am as a lifelong learner based on the literature and the topics that I've read about. In the same way, when it comes to writing, kids learn to write when they really write as an authentic author or journalist. And so what does that mean? That means following the writing process. I plan, I draft, I revise. I draft and revise again and again until I think I can't improve it anymore. Then I edit before I send it off to be published. So when it comes to real writing, we think there's 4 big ones. In narrative writing, that would be the personal narrative and the short story. In non-narrative writing, that would be the essay and the report. And one might argue that just as important as reading intelligence is, in the way I referred to a moment ago, writing proficiency and intelligence is equally important in any career. And so if I go to a digital-based portfolio and I can see that the person I'm looking at and trying to understand where they're at as a lifelong learner, I can see samples of their writing and even the process by which they went through to produce that writing, but I can see by reading some of their personal narratives, their short stories, their essays and reports, that tells me much more than a diploma or a certificate, even if it's coming from Harvard. And then, we talk about reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Well, what about, rather than call it speaking and listening, what about calling it conversation and presentation? That's real world speaking and listening. And so we're coaching our kids to be great conversationalists. What does it mean to be an active listener? What does it mean to inquire and probe? When you're working with a group, what does it mean to control yourself, both in terms of how much you say, when you say something, and how often you say something, so that you give others the chance to engage and offer to the conversation and so forth. So again, with these fundamentals of learning to learn, which I refer to as the pillars of literacy, whether it's on person or online, we have to stay true to these things, because this is how kids learn to learn, and this is how they become passionate lifelong learners. But again, with the online experience, it becomes a bit more challenging. So that's our challenge, is to keep pushing ourselves and reflecting about how can we make that happen and come alive with the online learning experience as well. Another big part of learning, whether it's online or on-site or online, is the home-to-school partnership. And so before COVID, our school had a tradition of having monthly parent cafes where we invited parents in, and one time for a cafe we might have 25, 50 show up. Sometimes we'd have as many as 100 parents show up, and depending on what the topic is or what's going on. And we try to engage them and help them understand how important it is to be involved in the learning experience of their child and so forth. And so just recently we had a parent cafe where we had I think 20 to 30 parents show up, and we basically wanted to reassure them about all the precautions and safety measures we had taken during this time of COVID, from mask wearing requirements at school to social distancing to sanitization, and then also what we're doing online when we're forced to go online because of COVID. And the more they understood it, then the more they were able to support their kids and to support us as a school. But at other times, we turn these parent cafes into helping parents understand what they can do at home to support their child's educational success. And before I came here to Kosovo, I was in China for a year, where, of course, for many months in the beginning, we were online as well. And one very interesting thing happened both in China, and it's happened here. And I've heard from parents both in China and here in Kosovo how powerful of an impact this was for them. And it was this, that they said, we didn't quite understand what our kids were going through, or we didn't get involved as much as we should have. But especially in the beginning of COVID, when we first went online for a couple months at a time, those parents also stayed home from work and worked online there. And because they were there, right there at home with their kids, they were forced to be a little bit more involved with their kids and to support their learning. And most all parents came to us and told us basically it was a blessing in disguise, and how thankful they were at least to have experienced this, because they reconnected with their kids in ways, especially for their education, that they had never done before. So that's another big thing that the online learning experience has taught us, and hopefully that we'll gain from, is how important this school-to-home partnership is, how important this teacher and parent partnership is to support our kids at home. So, you know, I guess that's it in a nutshell, you know, of how things have happened and so forth with online learning. But I guess I'll close for a moment on this, and we'll see if there's some questions. But, you know, we're just in the very beginning, the very pioneering stages of online learning. You know, as dynamic and as powerful and valuable as Khan Academy and BYJU'S and some of these other online learning links and platforms can be, we're only in the very, very beginning. Virtual reality is coming, augmented reality is coming. We can only imagine what it is going to be. And in the same way that, you know, now cars have gone from gas to electric, I might equate with where we're at with online learning today to the Model T Ford, the first cars that rolled off the assembly line way back when in the United States. So these are very exciting times, and hopefully the COVID crisis is now coming to an end, and we'll be safe and we won't face another pandemic. But one benefit we can be assured that we've taken from this is how it's pushed us forward and realize that there's real opportunities for online learning in the future, and we hope to take full advantage of them and grow as educators worldwide. So I don't know, there's my thoughts for the day on where we're at with online learning and how it's impacted academic learning. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much for the insights into digital learning. And as an alumni of ASK, I'm super excited to learn about how the school has evolved and embraced digital technology and to just digitalization in general.
Yeah,
thank you so much for the speech, and we really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Have a lovely day ahead.
Right.
For the rest of our audience, we'll be back shortly with the next presentation. Stay tuned. Thank you so much.